Inkale panja imozi I corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi I corona ilibendiwe fama I corona ilibe I corona ilibendine rida Anza kontolola no Corona ilibendine teacher Corona ilibendine doctor Corona ilibendine polisi Anza kontolola
Tisebenze pamozi ya mai Matenda tinga silize Tisebenze pamozi ya bambu Kamozi tinga kwanise Tisebenze pamozi ya mai Matenda tinga silize Tisebenze pamozi ya bambu Kamozi tinga kwanise. As we adapt to the new normal Together we can kulio and a solo The farmers and the traders must sell like a bully.
TNT Zambia kumanja osakwila kumenso Maka mwe balimi mwali ba essential
Mulyesha ziko Mweole meke zeko
Mukalale plasi konsefe na kumishi Amafunde wale sosa tuyasungishe
Tikwirizane tinkale panja imozi I corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi I corona ilibendiwe fama I corona ilibe I corona ilibendine rida Anza kontolola no Corona ilibendine teacher Corona ilibendine doctor Corona ilibendine polisi Anza kontolola
Tisebenze pamozi ya mai Matenda tinga silize Tisebenze pamozi ya bambu Kamozi tinga kwanise Tisebenze pamozi ya mai Matenda tinga silize Tisebenze pamozi ya bambu Kamozi tinga kwanise.
Lile mule afu abalimi mwe balabako Kwa bula bena nefya kulianga tafibako TNT konkanya pofye kula isunga Na mafunde basa sokula ya konka I COVID-19 Kutuwa ichimfe tubike pofye ka hygiene
Uko kufamu valani na mamaski Kuzamba kumanja ndiye ngani Alelelelelele Uko kufamu valani na mamaski Kuzamba kumanja ndiye ngani Lelelelelele
This message has been powered by the Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, with support from the Open Society Initiative in Southern Africa, OSISA, OSISA.
From the north to the south From the east to the west Shonse femi dundu Once if you have been a Zambia It's time we stood together One Zambia, one nation Pamok tuachimfyo ulwele wa coronavirus
Tikwirizane tinkale panja imozi I corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi I corona ilibendiwe fama I corona ilibe I corona ilibendine rida Anza kontolola no Corona ilibendine teacher Corona ilibendine doctor Corona ilibendine polisi Anza kontolola
Tisebenze pamozi ya mai Matenda tinga silize Tisebenze pamozi ya bambu Kamozi tinga kwanise Tisebenze pamozi ya mai Matenda tinga silize Tisebenze pamozi ya bambu Kamozi tinga kwanise. As we adapt to the new normal Together we can kulio and a solo The farmers and the traders must sell like a bully.
TNT Zambia kumanja osakwila kumenso Maka mwe balimi mwali ba essential
Mulyesha ziko Mweole meke zeko
Mukalale plasi konsefe na kumishi Amafunde wale sosa tuyasungishe
Tikwirizane tinkale panja imozi Corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi. Corona ilibendiwe fama. Corona ilibe Corona ilibendine leader. Banza kontrolola no. Corona ilibendine teacher. Corona ilibendine doctor. Corona ilibendine police. Banza kontrolola.
Tisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tingasilize. Tisebenze pamozi ya bambo, pamozi tingakwanise. Tisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tingasilize. Tisebenze pamozi ya bambo, pamozi tingakwanise.
Lira muleafu abalimi mwebalabako kwabula bena nefya kulyanga tafibako tyentu konkanya pofe kula isunga namafunde basosokula ya konka i-COVID-19 kutwa ichimfe tubike pofe kahaiting
uko kufamu valani na mamaski kuzamba kumanda ndiye gani alelelelelele uko kufamu valani na mamaski kuzamba kumanda ndiye gani lelelelelele.
This message has been powered by the Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, with support from the Open Society Initiative in Southern Africa, OSISA, OSISA.
Good evening. Welcome to this special unscripted episode brought to you courtesy of CTPD, that is the Center for Trade Policy Development. Tonight on the program, we get to look at an interesting topic, and this one we discuss revitalizing agriculture in Zambia. How can wheat deliver hope? That is what we are getting to discuss tonight, and to help me discuss this topic tonight is Dr. Simon Manda, who is joining us via Zoom. You're going to be having a chance to call in and contribute on this program. 0764250055 is the number that you're going to be calling. 0764250055. That's the number that you are going to be calling. Allow me at this time to introduce the guest that we have tonight on the platform. Dr. Manda, are you able to get me? Hello, good evening, Dr. Manda. Hello, good evening. Hello, Doc, are you able to get me? Hello, good evening. All right, as we try to fix, that connection We're going to go for a short musical break, and then on the other side, hopefully we do manage to get Dr. Manda through so that we can really get to the details of the topic we're discussing tonight.
From the north to the south, from the east to the west, Shonse Femi Dundu, once if you have in a Zambia, it's time we stood together. One Zambia, one nation. Pamoktua chimfyo ulwele wa coronavirus.
Tigwirizane tinkane panja imozi. I corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi. I corona ilibendiwe fama. I corona ilibe I corona ilibendine leader. Anza kontrolola no. Corona ilibendine teacher. Corona ilibendine doctor. Corona ilibendine polisi. Anza kontrolola.
Kisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambu, pamozi tinga kwanise. Kisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambu, pamozi tinga kwanise. As we adapt to the new normal, together we can call you and a solo. The farmers and the traders must sell like a
TNT Zambia kumanja osagwila kumenso. Maka mwe balimi mwali ba essential.
Mulyesha ziko, mumeole mekezedwa.
Mukalale plasi konsefe na kumishi. Amafunde bale sosa tuyasungishe.
Tigwirizane tinkane panja imozi. I corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi. I corona ilibendiwe fama. I corona ilibe I corona ilibendine leader. Anza kontrolola no. Corona ilibendine teacher. Corona ilibendine doctor. Corona ilibendine polisi. Anza kontrolola.
Kisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambu, pamozi tinga kwanise. Kisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambu, pamozi tinga kwanise.
Lile mule afu abalimi mwe balabako. Kwa bula bena nefya kulyanga tafibako. Tientu konkanya pofya kula isunga. Na mafunde basu sokula ya konka. I COVID-19 kutuwa ichimfe tubike pofya ka hygiene.
Uko kufamu valani na mamaski. Kuzamba kumanza ndiye ngani. Alelelelelele. Uko kufamu valani na mamaski. Kuzamba kumanza ndiye ngani. Lelelelelele.
This message has been powered by the Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, with support from the Open Society Initiative in Southern Africa, OSISA, OSISA.
Kisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambu, pamozi tinga kwanise. Kisebenze pamozi ya mai, matenda tinga silize.
Motherfucker Sunday. Hello, Doc. Are you able to get me now?
Yes, I can get you. I don't know whether you can hear me now.
Yes, I can. I can hear you. All right. We can then start. We'll be starting in just under 30 seconds.
Okay, great. And how we are stopping at the top of the hour?
We'll try to get a few more minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Powered by the Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, with support from the Open Society Initiative in Southern Africa, OSISA, OSISA.
Good evening. Welcome to this special edition of Unscripted, brought to you courtesy of CTPD. That's the Center for Trade Policy Development. Tonight, we get to discuss, like every other Friday night, we get to discuss an interesting topic that is of your concern. You need to be in the know and you need to get the conversation going. Tonight, we discuss revitalizing agriculture in Zambia, and to be specific, how can wheat deliver hope? How can wheat deliver hope? To help me discuss this particular topic is Dr. Simon Amanda, who's going to be joining us via Zoom. You're going to be having a chance to call in and contribute on this platform by calling the number 0764250055. Dr. Amanda, good evening, and how are you tonight? Hello, Doc. Good evening, and how are you?
Hello, Said.
Yes, we can get you, Doc. Please go right ahead. Are you able to get me? Are you able to get me, Doc? Hello, good evening, Doc. All right, we try to fix that glitch one more time. Maybe on the other side, we do hope to get the doctor loud and clear, and then we continue with this program. Stay tuned. Good evening once again. Sincere apologies for that delay, but I want to believe that now, Doc, you're able to get us. Good evening.
Good evening. I can hear you loud and clear. Apologies for the glitch in technology.
Yeah, this technology is understandable. Doc, it is an interesting evening tonight as, you know, we have to delve into an issue to do with agriculture, but with a specific focus on wheat and how it can bring hope. Do tell us more about tonight's topic.
So today, or tonight, we're going to talk about how we can revitalize the agricultural sector in a broader sense, but we'll be able to reflect on the wheat subsector in terms of understanding what's going on in that sector and why the country has not been able to maximize the potential coming from the wheat subsector, as well as maximizing the potential coming from the agricultural sector in a more general sense. So we understand that agriculture is key to our country, but tonight we're going to sort of delve into the key elements of why the agricultural sector has performed the way it has performed. And then we'll make reference to the wheat subsector.
All right. Many other times that, you know, when you talk of agriculture, the first thing that comes to one's mind in a country like Zambia is maize. But there hasn't been so much of a focus on wheat. Why is it very important that we discuss wheat production? And you can get right into our conversation for tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think what you've asked is a very important question. It appears in a more general sense that the definition of agriculture in Zambia is actually framed around maize, what others have said, the maize-centric kind of definition. And the focus on maize, in a way, has tended to blind the country from other important commodities and other important value chains. And as a Center for Trade Policy and Development, we are beginning to ignite these conversations to go beyond the maize narrative and say, wait a minute, why has agriculture performed the way it has performed? Is it because we are focusing so much on maize? If that's the case, what other value chains are more important to focus on? What other value chains can we commercialize in order to maximize the benefit coming from agriculture? And to begin with, from the broader perspective, agriculture is very, very important for poor countries or developing countries like Zambia in terms of employment creation, building of rural livelihoods, income disbursements to poor farmers, and the like. And more generally, in poor countries, about 50 to 90% of the population can be engaged in agriculture. Small-scale farmers form the majority of the actors in the agricultural sector. So saying if we are going to bring about poverty reduction or come about policies aimed at reducing poverty, then agriculture is logically the start point. And the focus on small-scale farmers is very important, therefore, to enhance or to reduce poverty in that context. Agriculture, we know from a broader context, is very important in terms of driving industrialization. When you look at the throughput, where the output from the agricultural sector rather feeds into the industrial base, and you're able to create employment not only at primary production level, but also at manufacturing and value addition level. And in that way, you have a sort of a complete sense of a value chain in the context of the systematic analysis of a chain itself. In Zambia, you find that agriculture is defined more broadly in three contexts in terms of crop production, livestock, and fishing. And producers can be divided between small-scale farmers, medium-scale farmers, and large-scale commercial farmers. And you find that agriculture's contribution to gross domestic product is to hover around 19 to 21% of the gross domestic product. And more generally, about 3/4 of our population in Zambia are engaged in agriculture. And this, in a way, helps us to understand the centrality of agriculture in not only the wider Zambian economy, but also in building rural livelihoods, and also trying to enhance food security for the majority participants that are engaged in the agriculture. But more generally, you find that Zambia might be land abundant, water abundant, natural resource abundant. The extent to which we have utilized land has remained very, very limited. Only 14% of arable fertile land has been deployed in agriculture, and even the water resources have not been taken advantage of. And we know that Zambia, has a lot of water resources, abundant water resources when you compare this to the SADC region. But the extent to which we have used these water resources, build irrigation to enhance our electricity supply, more generally has remained limited. And as a result, you find that in the agricultural sector, the small-scale farmers themselves have tended to anchor their production on rain-fed kind of system. And there's very little mechanization that tends to take place within the agricultural sector. So what we get here is we have a sort of a broader sense of what the agricultural sector is all about in the country, and the contribution has always been a little bit minimal. But you find that the agriculture is different from other sectors like mining, because the dynamics on which small-scale producers are integrated in the mining industry is so much complicated. It's not easy to enter in the mining sector, for instance. So we call these barriers to entry. But when you look at agriculture, the barriers to entry are minimal, are not that very. All you need is a small piece of land, and you're good to go. So when you talk about poverty reduction, we feel that the country is better placed to start with these industries that or sectors that present low, barriers to entry, or limit or fewer barriers to entry for the majority or Zambians. So when we come to the wheat subsector, this is a very interesting subsector, say, that has received peripheral attention, so to speak. The focus has largely been on maize and the like, but wheat has somewhat been distant in terms of the national agricultural conversations. And it's very important that we begin with some of these value chains that are very lucrative, very important, and can easily be commercialized, but have sort of been followed by a limited conversations at a national level. In the past year, for instance, the wheat subsector has received about 25% growth, but that is only about 190,000 metric tons of wheat, when Zambia actually faces about 250,000 metric tons in terms of wheat deficit. So wheat in Zambia, is grown by different actors, but the majority producers lie at a commercial level. And when that argument, in a way, says, paints a picture exactly what's going on in the subsector. Very few small-scale farmers have engaged wheat production at the commercial level, but the majority are the commercial farmers that have produced wheat for a long period of time. And you find that wheat is grown in Zambia like maize, like any other commodity ground that's in Eastern Province, rice, Southern or Western Province, and somewhere in Lundasi. But you find that wheat is priced in the US dollars, different from maize prices that tend to be pegged in the local currency, kwacha. And you find that the commercial producers, or the main producers who are the commercial actors, tend to adjust their prices accordingly to the US dollar peg. And currently you find that a ton of wheat is going at 450 US dollars. But you find that the Zambia's wheat is more expensive than any other region across Southern Africa. But production remains low as well. So we have not taken advantage of the wider wheat deficit, not only in the country, but across the region. So while Zambia's wheat per ton fetches about 450 US dollars, Kenya, for instance, the neighboring Tanzania would fetch around 270 to 280 US dollars per ton. Zimbabwe and Malawi would fetch around 340 US dollars per ton. And the prices of the rest of the countries across the sub-region would be generally lower than Zambia at 270 to 450 US dollars per ton, whilst Zambia is hovering around 450 US dollars per. So the prices of wheat have somewhat remained high in Zambia. And these are driven, the price itself is driven by several factors. The fact that you see in Zambia, there are perennial deficits of wheat, I say, basically because local farmers cannot meet the local demand. And now this also reflects the production structure that is actually anchored on fewer producers and commercial producers. So you find that Zambia consumes on average about 540,000 tons of wheat per annum, but continues to experience a deficit of about 250,000 metric tons of wheat per year, as earlier alluded to. This is despite the fact that the high prices on the market should be able to drive production at small scale level, at medium scale level, and large scale level. This has not happened in the subsector, and there are reasons for that. And we can ask key questions, key questions that we can present here. Why has this high price failed to stimulate local production? And who is benefiting from this high price? And most importantly, where is the money going to in terms of the wider support to the industry? And who is benefiting from the current wheat deficit? And these questions are very, very important in understanding not only the industry or the subsector structure, but also whether this reflects the wider narratives of agricultural diversification and whether it reflects the wider narrative on how agriculture can feed into wider growth of the economy.
And as we come to that, Doc, one would also want to ask if there is so much demand for wheat in this country. If there is so much demand, why haven't farmers taken advantage of this demand? And also, why do we keep having these fluctuations year in, year out, as you earlier alluded to, that our current is at around 190,000 metric tons, but in 2013 we did manage to produce around 214, and in 274,000 metric tons rather in 2013. Why the variations in the production of wheat in this country is another question to your many list of questions.
Thank you. And I think that's a very important question to address. The broader response to that is to argue that there are fluctuations, as we have highlighted, and there are divergences in the sector, as we have highlighted, basically because of the politics of the wheat industry, but also the politics of agriculture in the country. And I'm going to delve into details of that.
Sure.
The politics that Zambia is practicing in the agricultural sector and the politics that we see in the wheat industry are such one that they do not drive and engender capacity at a local level in terms of not only provision of input, provision of implement, but also in terms of the extent to which we have commercialized or liberalized the sector. And I'll get to the details of that. So the logical response when a country faces a deficit, say, is probably look at wider import regime, whether we can bring in imports in order to cover up the deficit. Okay, so that might be the logical response. But this, in a way, can take advantage of the cheaper prices across the region in order to cover the deficit that the country is experiencing. Zambian politics says, no, probably we are not going to go into that. So there's always an outstanding ban on wheat importation. That's number one. And this, in a way, the ban and the import regime underpinning the wheat industry are calculated that has tended to be abused not only by the government, but also by the key strong players that have underpinned the wheat subsector. The second reason is the tax regime, and I'm going to go into details later. That represents an additional cost of importation of wheat. So occasional, occasional responses like permitting wheat importation does not help to create a strong, robust subsector regime. And you find that the application of these import bans and then lifting them tomorrow has tended to create distortions, not only in the wider agriculture, but also specifically to the wheat subsector. So, for instance, I've mentioned that the deficits that we have incurred in the recent past as a result not only the import regime, but also the poor support at the production level and in terms of the small-scale farmers taking advantage of the gap. So you find that we failed to liberalize the wheat sector in a genuine sense that drives not only agriculture, but agriculture for business. Not only the way it drives the wheat sector, but the wheat sector for business. As a result, we are thinking as a country in silos. So agriculture first is defined as maize, and then later on we think about sugarcane, and then later on we think about wheat, as opposed to thinking of agriculture as a system that should be able to build and support each other. Input and, for instance, output from the wheat industry can feed into the food industry, the food and beverage industry, creating employment at the higher level, and like somewhat of a full support to the entire value chain system, as opposed to compartmentalizing these elements. So the starting point is to sort of think about the key actors that have underpinned this subsector. Who are the strong actors in the subsector, and how is their strength leveraged throughout the subsector, and who are the weaker players like the small-scale farmers, and how can we support them? I want to bring your attention quickly, Said, to the current tax regime. So Zambia has about 20% wheat import tax, which comes in terms of 15% import duty and an additional 5% surtax on importation. So a surtax or a surtax is an additional tax on something that has already been taxed. So this in a way pushes the prices up. Now, granted, there can be an argument that when industries are emerging, when a sector is at a lower level, at a seedbed level, it's important to protect it. So we don't want to kick away the ladder. We want to protect the a given industry. But whilst these regimes, policy and legal frameworks have tended to protect the local industry, but it's important to think about the cost of that regime. At whose expense are these regimes being implemented? So at this point, we realize that small-scale farmers are poorly linked to the wheat production. And the millers themselves might be receiving wheat that is costly. And whilst millers are able to push the prices to consumers, it's actually you and I who are the final consumers of these products that would receive a very, very high price. So either way, the regime can be deployed to protect the local industry, but there is a cost to that. And these regimes' policy and legal framework should not be static. They should be revised in view of latest information, in view of latest experiences, in order to make them effective. So for instance, we can bring wheat from South Africa at about $300 per ton. But by the time it lands in Zambia, an additional half of that, which is $150, would be charged in import duty and the like. So that is not really sustainable. So if you're going to look at the state tax, we can protect the local industry, but there's a cost to that. And the cost usually is on you and I as the ultimate consumers of these commodities. And this calls for a critical review of what is going on in the subsector. Said.
Thank you very much, Doc, for that beautifully done analysis on what is going on in Zambia with regards wheat production. Now you have mentioned a number of factors that are leading to this low production of wheat in this country. But then, what then needs to be done to bolster the confidence in the Zambian farmer that there is light or hope in wheat production?
Yeah, I think that's very important to sort of think about possible strategies that can be implemented in order to yield the desired outcome. I think the first and foremost is to agree as a country that agriculture is not where we want it to be. Okay, there's nothing wrong in acknowledging that we can do better, and realizing that it helps us to think about the possible solutions. And there are two issues here. The first relates to the conceptualization of agriculture, which is so narrow in a broader sense of Zambia. The definition of agriculture that is around maize, which tends to limit the support to other value chains, and also the politics that are subsector specific. And these two should not be mixed, but they can be thought about as being existing within the wider system, but not be mixed. It's important from the outset to appreciate that any subsector is underpinned by specific key actors. In the agricultural sector, we've got the Zambian National Farmers Union, the Ministry of Agriculture, and other NGO actors that are working in the around agricultural issues. And we're not here to sort of play the role and work that these institutions and actors are putting in place, but is to remind that more can be done. First is to think about agriculture as a system, not only in compartmentalized mode, but to think about agriculture as a system that is built in such a way that you are able to see a systematic interplay between production, manufacturing, and value addition. In the wheat subsector, we have seen that there's a concentration of producers around the large scale or commercial farms. Here we call for a specific review of state support beyond maize to lucrative value chains like wheat in order to integrate small scale producers. How can we do that? Simple. The government is already making efforts to drive irrigation systems across the country through outgrower schemes, through construction of dams. These efforts are existing, but they should be expanded to wheat production, irrigation support, and taxation regimes that will be able to allow irrigation equipment to arrive in the country at no or zero rate, and this is going to ensure that we support the local producers, as well as providing cheap finance to rural producers. Finance is a big thing among small-scale producers, and if we're going to integrate them in the wheat production, it's important to provide low-cost finance. The other thing is to building on the rural electrification. Irrigation is very important, and where this has existed, small-scale farmers have, small-scale producers have relied to a larger extent on a gravitational feed, which sometimes is not efficient. So building irrigation potential is one thing, but also providing electricity to enhance mechanization among small-scale farmers will be very, very, very important. The other thing that I can point out, is that Zambia can do better to maximize the existing land and capacity with institutions or entities like the Zambian National Farmers Union, the army, the prisons. All these are institutions that can be leveraged in expanding agricultural production vis-a-vis the wheat subsector. In the US and elsewhere, you find that, for instance, the Army Corps are very important in disaster mitigation and the like. So it shouldn't look strange in the Zambian context when we call on the ZNS or Zambian National Service or the Army or the prisons, for instance, to get involved in some of these production areas on a public, and also trying to advance private-public partnerships across the country. Very, very, very important. The other element is to review the tax regime. There's a role that a tax regime can play, but it's important to revisit the outcomes of the existing policy and legal frameworks. Policy and legal frameworks cannot be cast in stone. They cannot be permanent. They are supposed to be reviewed and constantly reviewed in the face of new evidence, in the face of new research. And in doing this, we can leverage on existing institutions. Research think tanks like Center for Trade Policy and Dialogue, research think tanks like IAPRI, the other side, research think tanks that are emerging from any, across the region. Universities such as University of Zambia, to not looking at wheat varieties, but also models that can ensure smallholder integration in the wider wheat value chain. Say it.
All right, Doc, at this point, I'd like to open the phone lines for our viewers. We're going to be going for a short break. On the other side, our viewers are going to be able to call in and ask those questions with regards to the topic we are discussing tonight. 076425 0055 is the number that you, the viewer, is going to be calling to be able to get through and join the conversation. We take the short break. On the other side, we welcome those phone calls, questions or contributions with regards to the topic we are discussing tonight.
Shonse Femi Dundu. Once if you have been a Zambia, it's time we stood together. One Zambia, one nation. Pamok to achieve your coronavirus.
Tigwirizane tinkane panja imozi. I corona sinapwele kuchita vingazi. I corona ilipendiwe fama. I corona ilipendiwe I corona ilipendine leader. Anza kontrolola no. Corona ilipendine teacher. Corona ilipendine doctor. Corona ilipendine polisi. Anza kontrolola.
Kisebenze pamozi ya mai matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambo pamozi tinga kwanise. Kisebenze pamozi ya mai matenda tinga silize. Kisebenze pamozi ya bambo pamozi tinga kwanise. As we adapt to the new normal, together we can kulio and a solo. The farmers and the traders must sell it kubuli.
Tienti zambe kumanja osakwila kumenso. Maka mwe balimi mwali ba essential.
Mulyesha ziko.
Chachina.
Nimeole meke zeko.
kalale plasi konse fena kumishi amafunde wale.
Thank you very much for staying with us. You are watching Unscripted, a special edition brought to you courtesy of CTPD. And tonight we're discussing revitalizing agriculture in Zambia. How can wheat deliver hope? 0764250055 is the number to call. On the other side, I do have Dr. Simon Manda, who is joining us via Zoom tonight and has been helping us unpack this, topic. So do calling 0764 rather 250055. That is the number to call for you to be able to get through studio and add your voice to this conversation. We're talking about revitalizing agriculture in Zambia and how can wheat deliver hope. Doc, you did mention quite a number of items as we were discussing before we went for the break. But you also did mention something to do with lack of support or poor support at market level when it comes to wheat production. What is the remedy to this particular challenge?
Yeah, thank you, Said, for that. In responding to your question, I want to create a picture here.
Sure.
That if a farmer is going to produce maize, there will be a support that has to do with the input supply. So they'll get fertilizer. In some cases, they can redeem lime, and then they can even redeem seed. Now we're talking about the e-voucher.
Yes.
And then when it comes to marketing, the farmers would be able to be shielded price-wise by the government. And the Food Reserve Agency would commit to buy the output, and sometimes rely on the Food Reserve Agency infrastructure that cuts across the entire country. So the farmer would be able to have not only input supply, but also a guaranteed market outlet through the Food Reserve Agency. And then the private sector would also get into the maize marketing itself. Now, this is somewhat of a support that some of these maize farmers receive. You don't see the same across the wheat subsector. The infrastructure is missing on the ground. The specific policy support towards this production is missing. And I think the first point is to acknowledge how that there's a gap in terms of the specific smallholder support for wheat production, and also how we can use existing infrastructure, such as by FRA, a Food Reserve Agency, in order to save not only the maize focus, but also to drive towards other important lucrative value. We don't need to build a parallel system. We can leverage on the existing system, but make sure that the specific support that is offered to the maize producers is also provided to other lucrative commercial value chains, like wheat in this case. Say it.
All right. Interesting, submission there. 0764250055 is the number to call. I would like to listen from you as well, our viewers that are following us from various parts of this country, and those that are following us, via our various platforms online, as well as those that are following us via our decoder, the Movie TV decoder, and the Topstar platform. 0764250055 is the number to call. And Doc, you have mentioned quite a number of items, and you have cited taxation as one of the taxation regime as one of the key factors to look at with regards wheat production in this country, if we are to bolster it. But do you think that Zambian farmers have the confidence to want to venture into wheat production, and if so, how? If not, why?
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I think in responding to your question, I would take you to some of the experiences I had, in the course of last year. In Tanzania, for instance, when you looked at the small-scale producers of rice, the specific government support to that subsector was very clear, not only in production, but also in marketing. There's a tendency to be so much attached to this subsector, and I think Zambia should desist from that. I know that maize, for instance, is very interesting politically, but that connection is what hinders the subsector from realizing its very potential. Small-scale farmers in Zambia would be very interested to cultivate, produce, or to engage a commodity that pays them well. The driver is, to a larger extent, economic. So with very good price, I don't doubt that small-scale farmers would be able to produce or engage this value chain. But experiences from Tanzania are in such a way that, for instance, there's what we call collective market, where cooperatives or through small-scale farmer cooperative, small-scale farmers will be able to collect their produce, so that they're able to leverage the price mechanisms through high output, or through having a bigger volumes. Collective marketing is something that we seem not to have explored very much in the Zambian context, but there's potential there in order to build that capacity at the local level, and also to enhance income disbursement. The taxation regime, is another thing to speak that lies at a much higher level beyond the production dynamic, but it has got implications across the entire sector. The question we are asking today is to reflect on the extent to which the sale tax, the import tax, the taxation regime around irrigation, equipment, all these combined contribute to stifling or encouraging the potential of the wheat subsector or the potential of the agricultural sector. And my argument today, I dare say that there is potential to improve some of these areas in order to enhance capacity at a local level. And one way is to reflect on the way the different dynamics of the agricultural sector and specifically the wheat subsector come together. And at the moment, there's still a lot of gaps that need to be addressed. Let's look at the employment creation. The larger part of employment creation that enhances more income disbursement might not lie at primary production. It will lie at value addition. It will lie at manufacturing stage. If we have high into the manufacturing process, then the output product itself becomes high, and very few consumers will be able to afford that, and that limits the demand of the commodities. It stifles the entire sector. We can say that millers, for instance, can pass on the cost to the consumers, but the extent to which this now stifles the industry growth and expansion is what we are talking about here. So there is potential to change some of these dynamics, just to start by acknowledging that we can do better as a country.
In as much as there's a great potential in wheat production, Zambian farmers will tell you that one of the challenges that they have faced is that of power deficits. Now that the country is seemingly, back on track with regards to power supply, what opportunity does this present then for that Zambian wheat farmer?
Yeah, I think what you've mentioned is very, very key, Said. Zambia and probably other sub-Saharan Africa have in the past 5 to 8 years, really, or even 10 years, experienced the challenge of power deficits. And I think in somewhere 2016, 2017, somewhere there, if my memory serves me right, the country was spending over 600 thousand or 600 million US dollars, I think, in trying to import power from Turkey, for instance, docking through the Mozambican border and the like. And this has continued through to today. And the issue of power can give you an idea of how big an industry can be from the broader international development. The size of power consumption itself by a given country will give you an idea of the level of production taking place. So we find that power deficits affect not only agriculture, but also wider small-scale enterprises, into timbers and the salon, in the barbershop, those that are in poultry, for instance. All these would be affected by power deficits. So it's not only specifically related to agricultural production, but wider, small, medium-scale enterprises. At a conventional level in agriculture, also irrigation would be affected because of this. There have been existing efforts by the government to enhance or expand the capacity of hydro electricity generation in the recent past. But I feel that that's probably one way of looking at power generation. I think we've lost an opportunity as a country to diversify our power sources. And I think we need to think critically beyond the relying on the mercy of the gods.
All right, Doc, allow me to pick a call.
Okay.
All right. Hello, good evening.
I don't know if they can do it.
Yes, you're through to Unscripted. Doc, we've got a caller. Let's just get a contribution from them and hear what they have to say concerning this topic. You're through to Unscripted on Movie TV. This is Said, and I have Dr. Manda online.
Yeah, I'm Jonas Sampa.
All right, Mr. Sampa.
From Mpika.
Mr. Sampa, please go ahead.
Yeah, the topic is quite interesting.
Sure.
I have a number of issues. Here in Mpika, farmers produce a lot of onions.
All right.
And the onions they produce, they use the residual moisture for irrigation. Because we have a number of wetlands around, and that's where they grow their onions. But if you look at the support, there is not even a single support towards the onion production. But meanwhile, the country is crying to say, no, there are no onions, no what. But here are the people. They are ready to produce onions. But again, what the problem where the problem comes in, when they produce these onions around September, October, you find the budget, 50 kg budget is costing about 100 kwacha. Now it pulls away a number of farmers from producing onions. But come rain-fed onion fetches very good money. But what is needed is training the farmers on how to produce it. It's very easy to produce the red onions and the rain-fed by using onion seeds. But they don't have any support. It be training or it be financial. That's why you find a lot of farmers are very behind and they don't make good money. Because the government does not help them in terms of looking at how to market the onion. You find that they are only interested in marketing maize. But onion can give at least a fortune to the farmers. But there's not even a single support given to them. That's my concern here in Mpika.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sampa from Mpika. Doc, I hope you're able to get that contribution. Mr. Sampa is talking about pricing. He's talking about how pricing is key, in the agriculture sector. Though he's not necessarily talking about wheat, he has mentioned, onion production. But even in the wheat, sector, pricing is one other key, point that farmers or wheat growers would want, government to intervene because it has to be fair.
Yeah, thank you for that contribution. And I think Mr. Sampa has mentioned something very, very, very important. There are certain commodities in Zambia where problems are not at production level. And again, we have not done well as a country to capture that potential and feed into processing, feed into value addition, feed into storage itself. For instance, when you look at tomatoes, the problem doesn't seem to be production. When you look at mangoes, watermelons, for instance, the problem doesn't seem to be production. We seem to have high volumes of these commodities in the certain parts of the year because of the seasonality of these commodities. And as Mr. Sampaz mentioned, because of the seasonality, you find that almost each producer will be able to offload to the market at the same period of time, which depresses the price. But where we have the specific processing capacity and value addition capacity, then that issue might not arise. So he's correct when he talks about seasonality, the prices and the like, and the missing value chain support for these farmers. And these are elements that we need to take into account. Having a clear understanding of what's happening in the sector, which sort of value chains and which sort of crops have problems at production level, and which crops have a production at the value addition, and through public-private partnerships, we can be able to initiate some of these elements. Said, I want to dare say, mention, I don't know whether this is something that, my viewers would agree with. We have seen a growth and expansion of, own savings, wealth creation groups. I don't know, we can have these, the savings groups that have emerged across the country.
Yeah.
The amount of money that is passing through these savings group is massive, but the government can tap into this potential by initiating specific public-private partnerships with these savings groups and say, wait a minute, let's have a tomato processing industry in Sparta, for instance, and this is the amount of money that a cooperative, a savings group is bringing, on board, and the government to provide infrastructure. It can work, driving into processing. This means we'll be able to address the issues of prices, as Mr. Sampa has mentioned, but also we'll be able to provide the support that onion farmers, cotton farmers, or tomato farmers would need close by within the geographical realms. And this is what we need to capture on as a country. Say it.
All right, Doc, our time is almost up. I will need to wind up, but as we wind up, I want to get your, final submissions with regards to the topic that we have been discussing today, and incentives as well that government needs to look at to ensure that that farmer is motivated enough as they get into this production of wheat.
Thank you, Said. I think from a broader perspective, the first argument is to say that there is need not to, we should not underestimate the centrality of agriculture in driving industrialization in the country and in helping to reduce poverty and enhance income disbursement for the different producers. We need to go beyond viewing agriculture as a poor man's business, as a small-scale business with poor mechanization, with no irrigation potential, to view agriculture as a sector where we can push our graduates, where we can push, any other individuals that are interested in commercializing this sector, and then the government can generate the sizable returns from there. From a broader perspective, it's important to view agriculture in a more systematic sense, and not in silos and not in compartmentalized mode. Policy and institutional frameworks that are driving commercialization and value addition in agriculture should not end on specific crops like maize, but should go beyond that and look at lucrative commodities such as wheat. Without the support for small-scale farmers, it's very difficult to integrate the producers into such a commodity. And also Zambia has talked about value addition, processing. It's important to link these to the wider dynamics of the agriculture sector, but also the specific sectors therein. And I think it's important from the outset to appreciate that I think Zambia can do better in transforming the agricultural sector, but we must take bold steps. We must take even unpopular steps in order to drive the agricultural sector in order to yield the desired capacity. Irrigation electricity, and the policy regimes. All these should be combined in order to create a systematic analysis of the agricultural sector. Thank you so very much, Said.
All right, thank you very much, Doc, and have a good evening. All right, I've been chatting with Dr. Simon Manda, and we were discussing the topic of revitalizing agriculture in Zambia with a specific focus on wheat and how wheat can deliver hope in this country, Zambia. This program was brought to you courtesy of Center for Policy, Trade and Development, CTPD. That's all we have for you tonight. Pleasant viewing.
I see opportunities to grow and to take Zambia to a whole new level. I see how we have overcome great challenges with real lasting solutions. I see proof of a great partnership. Others see a farmer. I simply see a man playing his part in securing